Don't hesitate.
I just want to let
Love
everybody,
it.
I am recording because I think this is great to have. So I want to have all of this information. I wanted to definitely introduce Lex and all that she's done after your icebreaker. Then I'll
Go for
introduce
it.
you. Do you have your own thing going on in the beginning to introduce yourself?
I will. Yeah, I do.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So I just started recording, everyone, but I now want to read what's in the chat. So I'm gonna go to the chat.
It is worth reading what's in the chat. And Michael, should I go ahead and get started?
You know what? Let's get started. Let's get started. You
Fire
can, if you
away.
want to put your thing on, I'll share my spiel, and then we'll keep
Oh
moving.
yeah,
Let's move, right?
you share your spiel. I'll stop sharing my screen. You go for it, and you let me know when to get started.
So everyone, let me share my screen one more time and introduce since we are doing this. Okay. Well, does everybody see my screen? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Tuesday. My name is Michael Gardner. I am the co-chair for the Professional Development Committee with New York State School Counselors Association. And today we have a great special guest, Lex Machakis. She is the owner and CEO of Live Big, which is an amazing curriculum that incorporates so many different things, from mental health to, all things that impact a student in school. And, using this curriculum from K to 12 is just great. And I want to take the time to thank her for joining us and want her to take over from here. Thank you, Lex.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's so good to meet you all. I'm going to share my screen now and share with you a quick agenda for our time, just so you know where we're going. Now we're here for the curriculum overview. So I'll do a quick introduction to Live Big as an organization. And then the things I thought that would be most helpful to share with you are what it means to live big, diving into our way of thinking about confidence, resilience, and self-leadership. And then the voice of small, which is one of our anchor concepts. Now, I don't want to just talk at you for the next hour. So I thought for the voice of small work, we could make that more interactive for folks that are open to it. And, you can engage as much or as little as you like. But most importantly, I'm able to talk for an hour, absolutely. But if you have questions, if you have a different perspective, if you're seeing any of this come to life with your students right now, please just interrupt me and share it either in the chat or just come off mute. Welcoming everybody's voices here to make this as fun and engaging as possible. Now you can see here under Safe and Brave Space, what happens in Live Big stays and Live Big. By that, I mean, if someone shares something that's quite personal or maybe vulnerable with what they've got going on, we just ask that it stays within the Zoom. So this will guide our time together today. Can I get a quick thumbs up? Does that work for everybody? Or a thumbs down, in which case I'm open to the feedback. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. So we will keep rolling and I'll introduce myself properly. My name is Lex Machakis and I'm the founder and CEO of Live Big. My story starts actually when I am 17 years old and I am your typical angsty teenager. I'm difficult to get along with. I'm breaking the rules. I'm trying my best, but I'm not an easy kid for my parents and for my mum in particular. One day, my mum comes home with this book. This is an actual book, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to say it out loud because it's being recorded and it is a swear word. The Princess B-Face Syndrome, Surviving Adolescent Girls. Raise your hand if you have seen or read this book. It's an Australian one, so it's quite likely that you haven't. Well, it's a very common book in Australia. And I do understand what Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg is trying to do, make light of a difficult period in a parent's life, the challenges of being a teenage girl. However, for the teenage girl, I was frustrated and angry that what I was going through was being mocked and reduced to a syndrome. So I said all this to my mum, in much less eloquent terms. And she was like, well, why don't you do something about it? So I said, fine, I will. Here I am at about 19 years old, writing a book of my own. This book was called Dealing with Mother, a survival guide for teenage girls. Y'all, I literally sat down and I wrote a revenge book about how teenagers can learn how to respond to their parents with what they're going through. Now, to everyone's surprise, I had it reviewed and psychologists were like, oh, this is actually really useful. We'd love to give this to our clients. For a lot of obvious reasons, I decided not to publish that book. And my mother, who you can see in this photo here, is very grateful that I didn't, I think. We get along well. Things are great now. But it did solidify a few things for me. It solidified that my life's work was going to be supporting adolescents. And I think of that from like 10 and up. Supporting adolescents, that there is power in sharing our stories, and we must do that to deliberately connect with them. And that's going to be my work, and that's going to be my life's mission. So at this time, I actually finished this book. I've got a little bit of a corporate career under my belt. I decided to go back to school to train as a counselor, specialize in trauma and child and adolescent development. And from there, Live Big is born. And it started with me running workshops with adolescent girls. Pretty quickly, it became all students, not just girls. But also, my early clients were like, hey, this is great. There's one of you. Can you please train my counseling team? Obviously, the answer to that is yes. You are the ones in the schools doing the work with kids every day. So from there, we evolved to become a train the trainer program with programs designed specifically for counselors to do this work with their adolescent population. And that's what we do now. We work with different counselors and schools and districts across the country, giving them a program designed specifically for them to help them work with their adolescent population and to run their small group interventions. Now, I say specifically for them because let's be real for a second. How many of you have been given materials designed for a teacher and you're like, cool, but this isn't what I do and I actually need something a little bit different? Raise your hand if you've been there. I'm not seeing hands, but I'm not really seeing anyone's face either. So that's okay. Whatever your answer is, just know that it's been designed for you. So what we do now, we have programs designed for counselors. It is a tier 2 system, and it's based off 3 growth pillars: self-observation, self-affirmation, and self-regulation. So everything that we are doing in our programs comes back to one of these 3 things. And I think everybody on this call knows if we can do this well, we can keep the kids in the classroom. We can keep them coming back to school. They won't become your high flyers. If we can help them regulate and learn how to respond to challenges, that's how we can help them get through life, but also make your lives easier too. So now I'm going to get started a little bit on the curriculum overview. That's why we're here. And to do that, what I'm going to do is share what it means to live big, the way that we think about confidence, resilience, and self-leadership, and then dive into the voice of small. And then at the end, I'm going to share what all of the programs look like for you. But these are really the core concepts to understand. All right, let me check in. So far, so good. Anybody have anything in the chat? Okay, we're doing good. Okay, so you can see it on my screen here. This is what it means to live big. This is what we want our adolescents to understand. And before I go too far into it, because I know I had a couple of elementary folks, when we say adolescents, we tend to encourage counselors working with students grades 4 to 12 to work with our programs. I think it was Jennifer who said they're in elementary. We do have a lot of counselors working with Live Big in like the 3rd grade as a way to prepare them for those really fun preteen stages. But really where we are focusing is the adolescent experience. Alrighty, so living big is a choice that you can make in any moment of every day to first connect to yourself. We think of that as our mind, our body, and our character. And we do it so that we can create more of what we need. And we focus on confidence, resilience, and self-leadership. And when we can create more of what we need, we can be powerful. And powerful means you are filled with the power that you need to live the life that you want to live, and you know it. That's what's key here. That's what it means to be powerful. And you can live big in moments like, where should I go to school? But you can also live big in moments like, I'm tired. I'm not going to the party. I'm going to stay in bed. Or I'm being pressured to do something that I don't want to do. I'm going to say no. I bring that one up because I know a lot of you are struggling with peer pressure and that being filmed and put online, and challenges where kids are trying to navigate their online social dynamics and their in-person social dynamics as well. I'm curious, just put it in the chat. Is that something that you are struggling with your kids right now? Are you seeing a lot of that peer pressure either virtually or in person? And if you are, feel free to comment a little bit about what that's like for you. I'll give folks a few minutes to put that in the chat if they'd like to share. No pressure. Age. I don't have kids, but I can see that with my nephews who are in high school. Yeah, it's happening a lot. Is anyone else seeing that sort of peer pressure focus with their students? Students in general, social media is a struggle and it interferes. Yeah, students following trends, which creates drama. Now we have all the stories coming in. Take a read of what's coming in the chat. Everything ends up on social media. Pressure to be with friends in the hallway and dress a certain way. Absolutely. And that's hard for kids, right? They're developmentally designed to fit in and go with the crowd, but yet they're making choices that don't quite serve them. So this program is all about how do we help our kids make choices that are going to serve them and help them be the people that they want to be. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So here is how that translates into our programs that we have. And you can just see on the slide in front of you, we have foundational programs, core programs, and advanced programs. Each of these programs has 5 lessons with on-demand training videos, worksheets, guides for you, slide visuals, everything that you need. And we help you think about how you can customize it. So you start with the foundations, but then you do a deep dive on confidence, resilience, and self-leadership. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the core programs in just a moment, but I wanted to give you the overview. Now, once you go through those core programs, you've got all of the advanced programs available to you. Social media is a massive one. Social media is about how do you use it in a way that is safe for you, but also safe for your peers and for your community. Big friendships, dealing with the friendship drama. It is one of the biggest challenges that our adolescents face. How do we help them understand what a friend is and communicate boundaries and also take care of the most important friend in their life, which is honestly themselves? Be powerful. How do we help our students tap into a sense of, I am powerful. I do have agency in my life. How can I choose it? Resolving conflict. This is my favorite module. And honestly, I'd love all the adults in my life to take this one too. How do we resolve conflict in a productive, proactive way? And then the final one for my high school counselors in particular, life after school. How do we think about what our life after school might be and take away some of the anxiety and the fear and just go out and try things? So these are all of the programs that we have in the Live Big curriculum. So really for any needs that you have with your students, You have it all available to you here. And all of it, though, is centering back to this idea of living big. Everything we do, it's about learning, how do I connect to myself to create more of what I need so that I can be who I want to be. Alrighty, I'll start to jump into the core programs in just a second, but before I do, I would like to check in if anybody has any questions or comments. You're more than welcome to share. I'll take a quick pause and a sip of my water. You can put it in the chat as well if you would like. Okay, and while I give folks a moment, I'll just touch on, because Paige, I can see you and it's reminding me of a conversation that we had before. I'm Australian, but I am based in San Francisco, and I just spent the last 6 years or so in New York. And I want to say that so that you know that you are speaking to a US-based company and not an Australian one. Okay, no questions or comments yet. Let's keep rolling. So we're going to do a deep dive into what's in the core curriculum, and I'm going to do that by sharing our way of thinking of these words. And the first one is confidence. So we have an entire program based on confidence. This one's really good for our quieter kids, our kids who are a little bit more withdrawn. They're staying in their comfort zone. They don't want to move out into their growth zone. They are your ones that are walking into class with their hoodies over their heads, and they're just generally hiding from the world a little bit, and they're really not sure about their place in it. So we have this module around confidence. Now, the first thing to do with confidence is redefine it, because for so many of our kids, I'll just go back here for a second, when you ask them what confidence is, they say things like having a lot of followers, the way that you dress, the way that you look, being able to speak to lots of different people. And what we put forward is that's not actually confidence. We need to think about a different idea of confidence so that we can realize it is something that we can all be. So here is the Live Big definition of confidence. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to give you a moment to read it for yourself and absorb it before we chat about it. It's a pretty big definition, right? It's a lot of components to it. So let's break it down. Confidence is, firstly, a belief in yourself. And it's a belief in yourself now, with what you can do now, but also it's belief in your potential, your possibility. It's knowing I can grow and I will grow, and I believe in that. So that's the first thing. It is a belief in yourself. The second, you feel it in your body. It's not just something you think. And if anyone's ever walked into a room needing to network or meet people for the first time, and you're saying to yourself, be confident, be confident, be confident, but your entire body is trembling because you're nervous, you know what this is. There is a difference between pretending and thinking about something and actually being it. So that's what this one means. It's independent. You can feel confidence no matter who you're with, what you're doing, or what you have. You can be confident going to the supermarket in the same way that you can be confident going out with your friends and getting dressed up to look nice. Confidence is available to you in all of those moments. Why that matters so much for our kids is they think that in order to be confident, they have to wait to get the latest shoes, or they have to wait to get a certain number of followers that they are aspiring to. And we say, no, you can feel it now in this moment if you choose to create it. And that's the last point. It's creatable. And actually, I'm going to take a pulse check here. Raise your hand or put in the chat, have you ever told yourself, I'm just not a confident person? Who's ever said that to themselves? I'm just not a confident person. Yeah, I can see a couple of hands. A couple of answers in the chat. Okay. We've got some yeses. Anytime, oh, Kiana, I'm with you. Public speaking, it'll take a moment. I understand completely. Here is my challenge to you and what I challenge all of the kids that go through Live Big programs. You don't say that to yourself anymore. You're not born confident or not. Some people seem to be more confident because they're more extroverted, perhaps, but that doesn't equal confidence. Confidence is something that we can create for ourselves at any time. There are skills to do that, just as there are skills to learn an instrument, to do your job, to play a sport. Confidence and everything we do in Live Big is made up of a series of skills that we can choose to practice over time. And the more that we practice the skills of confidence, the more confident we will become. Alrighty. So this is what it means to be confident. The confidence module has 5 lessons as a reminder. So the first lesson is basically what we're reviewing together now, but with some really fun engagement activities built in. The rest of the module is about how do we actually create confidence, and it dives into the skills of it. So I'll take a quick check-in here and just see any questions or perspectives that people want to share before I keep rolling. So far, so good. Okay. If you think back to the Heart Guide, it's about creating confidence, resilience, and self-leadership. We're up to resilience now. Now, resilience is one of those funny words that I think we use a lot in society today, which is good. But when you hear the word resilience, and when you ask kids what they think resilience means, they will say things like bouncing back, pushing through, being tough, mind over matter. And I'm willing to bet we've all heard and perhaps used one of those phrases in relation to resilience. We think of it very differently. And the best way to explain why is to share a little bit about Simone Biles' story. Who here, and you can just raise your hand or put in the chat, who here has seen the documentary of Simone Biles on Netflix? Maybe some of us have, some of us haven't. Okay. Simone Biles talks about what it was like for her in the Tokyo Olympics, where she got the twisties, which in gymnastics terms means your mind and your body is no longer connected. She couldn't will her body to do the things that she actually knew how to do. Now, why that happened for her was from years and years of having traumatic experiences and stressful experiences that she did not process. She had, difficult things in her childhood, but most relevant to that time period was all the Larry Nassar trials. And she kept going, and she told herself she was okay. And the world said to her, "You're amazing. You bounced back. You're pushing through. Keep going." But then she got to a point where she physically could not. And that's the danger with definitions of resilience that center around pushing or bouncing or toughening your way through. It doesn't actually get to the root of what's causing the challenges that are coming up for you. So if you think about resilience, the very first thing to do is to think about stress. What is stress? How does it show up in my body? And we have examples here. I should share. These are the slides that we share with students. So you're seeing the sort of material that they get. Stress can be no energy to get out of bed. It could be nausea. It could be difficulty concentrating, feeling nothing. Or if anyone's ever been so angry that their hands have shaken. We have stress, and it has a really pronounced impact on what's happening and our experience. So what happens if you don't deal with stress? If you don't deal with stress, it leads to overwhelm. Or in Simone Biles' experience, it leads to the twisties. It leads to an inability to really function and do the things that we're normally able to do. So the live big approach to resilience is this one. Resilience is noticing and dealing with stress so that you can live a big life. I am willing to bet my life savings, which isn't much, I'll tell you, but I would bet it all that every single person here has had an experience of being stressed, really stressed, but not actually realizing until it was too late. And that's why noticing is the very first thing that is highlighted. We first have to notice, oh man, I am stressed right now. I've got a lot going on. I am finding this hard. Once you notice it, only then can you deal with it. And when we deal with the stress, that's what allows us to connect to ourselves and make choices that serve us so that we can live a big life. Why I also believe really deeply and why the live big definition of resilience is this one is because when we praise our kids for being resilient, but we don't actually help them deal with what they've experienced with their mental health, with their challenges, but we're giving them a pat on the back for coming to school every day, they're going to have a Simone Biles moment where that stress comes out and they can no longer get through the day or keep performing at the peak or, come to work every day. So we also need our kids to know strength is saying, I'm stressed. Resilience is saying no to things and resting and crying sometimes and not being tough, but actually allowing yourself to be soft or whatever it is that you need to do to actually process the stress in that moment. Okay, you can see I have a lot of strong feelings about resilience. If anyone wants to chime in, you're welcome to. I'll give you a moment before we talk a little bit about self-leadership. Okay. Self-leadership. You're not meant to have favorite children, but this one is probably mine. This is my favorite of the Live Big programs. What is self-leadership? We talk a lot about being a leader and what that looks like and the impact that leaders have on the world. But in order to do that, to be a leader for others, we have got to be a leader in our own life first. And too often we're not, too often our kids are not. Why they're not is because of something that we call a chain reaction. So a chain reaction is this. You have a challenging situation. You experience an uncomfortable emotion, and so you have an automatic reaction, and then something called your voice of small, which I'm going to explain to you in a little bit. It chimes in, and it makes you feel even worse than what you did before. It either shames you or it justifies what you did. So let's take a couple examples so you can see how this is brought to life with your students. Let's say the challenging situation is a kid approaches me in the hallway and wants to fight. I'm guessing we've all been there. The uncomfortable emotion I might feel as that kid being challenged to fight is maybe fear, but maybe it's fear of being embarrassed or laughed at by everybody else. And so maybe my automatic reaction, because I am feeling that fear and that embarrassment, is to just take a swing and actually start a physical altercation with that other person. And I do that instantly out of fear. It's like fight or flight. And then maybe afterwards, when I'm, sitting in the principal's office or with you all, and I'm being asked why I did what I did, my voice of small, which is that negative self-talk in my mind, it's probably saying, well, they deserved it. Let's take another example. And again, let me think from the lens of a student. Let's say my challenging situation is that I've had a little bit of friendship drama and I get a not so nice text from somebody who I thought was my friend. The uncomfortable emotion that I might feel there is just deep shame. And from feeling that shame, perhaps my automatic reaction is just shut down. It's not aggressive, it's not outspoken, it's not loud, but it's just, I'm shutting down because this is too hard. And maybe because I shut down, I don't do my homework that night. And then my voice of small, that voice responsible for that negative self-talk, it's probably going to chime in and say something like, yeah, you deserve it. You're not a good friend. So we have, and all of us has patterning of our own, but for our students, it's so pronounced because they do not yet have the impulse control that we have. However, they can learn it. They can learn it when we help them understand this is what a chain reaction is, and there is something you can do about it. And that's what self-leadership is. Self-leadership is pausing and connecting to yourself so that you can choose who you want to be and how you want to respond to situations in your life. So we have 3 skills here: pause, connect to yourself, and choose your response. This module in particular is used a lot for our students with big behaviors as a debrief to help them understand what happened and why. And then to actually give them these skills to help them understand, how can I pause in those moments? How can I figure out what I am feeling in my body and what my mind is telling me to do? And Hannah, how can I choose the response that's best going to serve me? So the story that I tell when I do this work with students is when I was about 15, 16 years old, and I had a really bad cold, I had a really bad head cold, and I'd used like every single tissue in the house. And I go to my mum, hey mum, can you get me some tissues? And can you get me those eucalyptus scented tissues? Because I think they're helping clear out my nasal passages. Now, we all know that doesn't actually happen. It is a complete marketing gimmick, but my teenage self fell for it. And my mum was like, no, I'm busy. I'm cooking you dinner. Can you just use some toilet paper? I'll get you some tissues tomorrow. I flipped out, got so upset, so angry. I actually picked up an empty box of tissues and I threw it at my mum. As soon as I did it, I was like, big mistake. What did I do? Shouldn't have done that. And I got grounded for like a month. But it's an example of how we can feel that heat of the moment. We can react automatically, wish we didn't do it, but then not have the ability to get ourselves out of it and choose differently. So, you know, it's not my finest moment in my life, but it's an honest one. And it's the sort of thing that our kids are going through all the time. How can we help them figure out how to lead their own life by making choices that serve them, regardless of the challenging situations that they've got coming their way? So just like resilience, just like confidence, this program also has 5 lessons. So it starts with a deep dive of what self-leadership is, kind of like what we have done. Then it goes into the skills of how do you pause? How do you connect to yourself? How do you choose a different response? Any questions or comments on this one here before we jump into the voice of small work? Okay. Let's jump into the voice of small. And I'm not just going to explain it to you because I think the best way to understand it is to have it brought to life. So if you can, engage with me on it. And if you just want to sit and listen, that's okay too. But I'm going to give you the experience as counselors give their students when they're doing this work. The very first thing I'm going to ask you to do is actually to just sit there with your eyes closed or your gaze lowered and do nothing in silence for about 30 seconds, starting now. Okay, bring your attention back. Go ahead and put in the chat for me or raise your hand if during those 30 seconds you had a thought pop into your head. Just any thought at all. Did you have at least one thought pop into your mind while you were trying to do nothing? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm seeing the chat. Yes, yes, yeah, shamelessly. I feel you. Yeah. Okay. Yes. We all have a thought pop into our head. Antoinette, I am with you. There are a couple of us who are like, yeah, can we just extend this 30 seconds to 30 minutes and call it a night? I get it. Okay. So we all have thoughts all the time. And even when we try and do nothing, we have thoughts jumping in our heads at any moment. Now, sometimes those thoughts are, I'm hungry, I'm tired. Or maybe it's, oh, she's got flowers behind her. Or maybe it's planning for what you've got to do tomorrow. But sometimes those thoughts that come into your mind are directed inward at yourself, and they're not nice. Are we all familiar with negative self-talk? That voice in your head that is mean, is putting you down? Yeah, I'm seeing nods. Here is why we ask this question of who noticed a thought pop into their head. Philosophical question for you. If I can observe something, what does that mean? Reflect on that. And if you'd like to answer it, you can, but you don't have to. Just reflect. If I can observe something, what does that mean? If I can observe something, it means I am not that thing. If I can observe something, I'm seeing it, I'm noticing it as separate from me. I am not that thing. If you can observe your thoughts, you are separate from them. You are not your thoughts. And why that matters so much is, yeah, we have the I'm hungry, I'm tired, what am I doing tomorrow thoughts. But because we have the negative thoughts, especially for our teenagers, they're so loud, so persistent, and so frequent, they start to identify with those thoughts. They think those thoughts are true, and they think those thoughts are real, and they think those thoughts are them. So we need our kids to see you are not your thoughts, you are not your negative self-talk. Where that comes from is the voice of small. So let's dive into the voice of small. The voice of small is that voice in your head responsible for all of the negative self-talk. Now, the voice of small, it's like a spokesperson. It comes from something called our limiting beliefs. And we form limiting beliefs, as we all know in this group. We form them often when we are younger, often without realizing it, in response to situations that are scary or painful or difficult, or because we're trying to fit in and be accepted. So here are some examples of limiting beliefs. I have to be perfect. I need to fit in. I can't make any mistakes, or I'm not going to be accepted, or I'm not good enough. So we form limiting beliefs like this in response to our experiences or to social conditioning about the role we are, quote unquote, meant to play. We form those limiting beliefs and they drive our behavior without our even knowing. And then the voice of small starts to speak from those limiting beliefs. Like, God, I really messed that up. Can't believe I did that. So if we take a common example, let's say I'm in first grade and my teacher asks a question. I think I know the answer, so I excitedly raise my hand. The teacher calls on me. I give the answer, but it's wrong. And everybody laughs at me. That might be a moment of a limiting belief being formed of I have to be perfect or I won't be accepted. So maybe I formed that limiting belief in first grade. Fast forward to my freshman year, my teacher asks a question, I don't want to answer it. And I don't realize, but what I'm afraid of is being laughed at by my peers. And because I don't want to answer it, I don't engage. Because I don't engage, I don't get the help that I need. Now, on the other end of this spectrum, and unfortunately, this is true for so many of our kiddos, I'm sure you see this, maybe they come from an environment where they are led to believe or they are told, you're not good enough. And they carry that limiting belief around with them. And then they go to make friends at school, or maybe they get into a romantic relationship. And maybe it's not the healthiest romantic relationship. And their voice of small says, stay here because this is the best you're going to get. Now, let me just check in. Is what I'm saying resonating with you based on the experiences that you have with your students? Do you see this? Do you see this in your office? Do you see kids coming to you with these sorts of limiting beliefs and a loud voice of small? Share it in the chat. Yeah, Paige, you're right. And actually, Paige, everybody said, personally, I can relate. You are so right, in fact, that we now get asked to come and do these workshops with the adults in the education system because it doesn't go away. So we have a voice of small and our limiting beliefs. But here's my next question for you. Why do we have it? Why do we have a voice of small and limiting beliefs if all it does is hurt us? Would anybody like to share? You don't have to. Yeah, Paige, you're spot on. To protect us. Because we never want to again feel that fear or that shame or that pain. And we don't want to be excluded. So our limiting beliefs are trying to limit us to keep us safe. And our voice of small is just trying to keep us safe. So what we can do with the voice of small, because it's trying to keep us safe, you know, our entire evolutionary wiring is to keep us safe. We can't positive affirmation our way out of a voice of small. If we could, we wouldn't exist in our profession, wouldn't be needed. You can't do that. So what we can do is three things. We can first identify our voice of small and the limiting belief it's speaking from. Second thing we can do then is separate from our voice of small and the limiting beliefs by realizing it's not true, it's not real. And then we can reframe the thoughts in our mind. That is not a quick silver bullet solution. I know it takes years and years of practice, but if we can teach our adolescents these skills now, think about what it's going to be like for them in their 20s, their 30s, or their 40s. Think about how it might just help them get through the challenge they're facing that day. Vanessa, I'm reading what you're putting in the chat here. Today, there was a student who was looking at third marking period grade and had only one B+ and everything else was an A. And he was belittling himself. What's that limiting belief? I have to be perfect. Yeah. Yeah, Vanessa, you're with me.
Exactly. Those were the exact words that he said.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be perfect. I must be perfect. And I was just I just looked at him, and there was another student sitting on my other side, like they were friends, and she was like, "Oh, I wish I had that grade in biology," because she struggles at biology. She's like,
Yeah.
if you want, you can give me the B and I can give you my an A that I have in English class. So they were like going back and forth, and he was like, no, I have to be perfect. My grades have to be perfect. He was like, oh, this grade is making like a mark on my grade, like a bad mark on my grade. I'm like, wow. So yeah, we had like a back and forth, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, what we want him and all students to understand is that's a limiting belief that you hold. Your voice of small is speaking from that limiting belief. What can we do about it so it's not the loudest voice? So Vanessa, like you said, step one, identify it. You called it out for him. He saw it. Then we separate from it and reframe it. Now, if you're willing, I'm going to offer for a few minutes what we do to separate from it. And part of why I want to do this with you is because we have some free lessons on our website, and it's this one, because I really do think the world would be a different place if every single person knew their voice of small. So I'm sharing it with you so that if you would like to download it and use it with your students, you can. So we've identified the voice of small and limiting beliefs, and I encourage you to just reflect for yourself for a moment. What is a limiting belief that I might hold? And what does my voice of small say to me from that limiting belief? You don't have to share it. I just want you to reflect for a minute or so, and probably want to spend a little longer on it, but I'll give you a moment. Once you have identified your voice of small and a limiting belief it's speaking from, we all have many limiting beliefs. It's unfortunately part of the human experience that we experience pain and shame. What we can do to separate it from it and reduce its power is to actually give it a name and a character. Now, I know I have a lot of people on this call who have probably done a lot of study. This comes from IFS, internal family systems, as a modality, which Inside Out is actually based on. Have we all seen Inside Out? I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, okay. When we give something a name and a character, it helps us realize it's not us. And it can help us have a dialogue with it so that we can separate from it and reduce its power. Because have you ever heard the saying, what you resist persists? Some of us maybe. No, Vanessa, you haven't? Okay, it's an interesting one. If we ignore it, because we've all probably tried to ignore our negative self-talk, it didn't disappear. So rather than ignoring, let's just separate from and actually speak to it. So the first thing to do is give it a name and a character. And you could use Inside Out as inspiration, and you could call it anxiety or fear. But I actually like to give it a name and a character and dress it up. And the kids love to do this too. So my voice of small's name is Georgina. And if you've seen Pride and Prejudice or Bridgerton, that's Georgina's vibe. She wants me to be perfect all the time. She wants my hair done up in one of those buns with not a single flyaway in sight. It's never going to happen. Hates when I use filler words. Hates when people don't like me or they're not warming to me. She wants me to be perfect constantly. Or you have kids who will say their voice of small's name is Regina George. Mean Girls is now like in the throwback category, which is hilarious to me, but it is what it is. Regina George, and it's being mean and nasty towards them. So I want you to think of what you would name your voice of small based on how it speaks to you and what it's like. My only caveat is please don't name it a parent. The goal is not to hate on this thing. It's to become familiar with it, become friends with it, so that when we hear it, we can say, hey, Georgina, thank you for trying to help me. Just going to have you step aside. I've got it from here. So take a moment to think about your voice of small's name. You're welcome to share it if you'd like to, but you don't have to. But this will help you do this with your students if you decide to do that. You think about a fictional character, could be alliteration like worried Wendy, angry Andrew, that sort of vibe. I'm going to just be quiet for 30 seconds and let you think about it. Okay. One of my favorite parts of my life, honestly, is asking students, what did you name it? And they come up with the most hilarious, beautiful characters and names. But then the cool part is they share it with their teachers and their counselors and their friends. And they start to be able to say, Paige, is that you or is that your voice of small speaking right now? You're not being very nice. to yourself. And it becomes actually a part of their life that other people can see, so that it helps you work with that student when they are being so down and hard on themselves. So Vanessa, thinking about your student, you could have said, B+ is great. Is that your voice is small speaking right now? Now, the very last thing that we do in this exercise is we have them write a letter to their voice of small. This is where you will have actual tears, where they will say the most beautiful, profound things like, hey, I know you're trying to protect me, and thank you so much for doing that, but I don't need you anymore. Can you please just go away so I can handle this myself? And we know one letter is not going to change that student's life, but if they can do that every time they hear it, they are building so much power in their ability to make choices that serve them and show up as who they really are. So you will have access to the Voice of Small lesson. The Voice of Small shows up in every single program. So every single thing that we do, whether it's big friendships, social media, confidence, we help students understand, how is your voice of small impacting you right now? And what can you do about it to reduce its power in this moment? So I always share the Voice of Small, because once you understand this, once your kids know this, it opens up a whole world of work with them. So I'm not going to give you homework, but I will gently offer, if you would like to write a letter to your voice of small tonight, just be like, hey, thanks, but off you go. I've got it from here. I encourage you to do it. Alrighty, everybody, with 4 minutes to spare, I know you're hungry and I know you're tired, so I most certainly will not keep you. But I want to thank you for spending your night learning a little bit more about our work at Live Big Community. And if you would like to learn more or access those free lessons, I've given you the QR code there. And actually, I can also probably put it in the chat for you. Let me do that in case that's easier. So you have the Voice of Small lesson and the Living Big lesson. And if you're just like, I need some materials for my kids, all you did was that, it would be so, so valuable for them. So if you'd like to, feel free to download it. You've got my email. Please email me any questions that you have if you'd like to learn more. I'd obviously love to chat. Even if you don't want to learn more, I'd still love to chat. I think the work that you do is so, so important. And I always love getting to know counselors. So thank you so much for being here. Michael, I don't know if you're there or if you have anything that you want to add. I want to give you
Absolutely here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lex. This was amazing. I was here the whole time. I couldn't help but to go nowhere, as you guys can see. But thank you, everybody that attended and that joined. And any questions you want to go over? Any last minute things you want to add, Lex? Or
stay in touch. I really would just love to chat with all of you. I think